Hi, it's a pleasure to meet you all. My name is Amber and I'm going to be your nutritionist for today, which is absolutely awesome. It's great to be here. Thank you guys so much for having me. What we're going to be talking about on a very foundational level is how to take your basketball performance from here to here using nothing but nutrition strategies and how to stay here. That's not talking about eating less. That's not talking about eating more. That is talking about what you should be eating to fuel your body based on the basketball demands that you're putting on it. Yeah, cool. All right, so just a wee introduction. My name is Amber. I am a registered sports nutritionist, holistic health coach, performance nutritionist, and I also have a master's in health science. So I'm really hoping that in this quick 20-minute presentation, I will be able to absolutely cram your guys' brains with as much as I possibly can. So it's going to be a 20-minute presentation. Then we are going to have 10 minutes for questions. That's going to be you guys asking me any questions you have on the presentation. It's going to be any questions you guys have just in general, whether that's to do with health, whether that's to do with basketball, whether that's to do with nutrition. And we also are going to have a wee pop quiz style questionnaire in there where I ask you guys 4 questions. There are 4 opportunities for prizes today, but don't worry, there are going to be, like throughout the presentation, I am going to point out what I want you guys to take a mental screenshot of. Now, I do understand that everyone learns in completely different ways, and we are going to be covering a lot today. So feel free to take pictures, videos, feel free to voice record what I'm talking about, feel free to take out your phones and write down in your notes section what I'm talking about. We're going to be covering a lot. And the more you guys get out of me being here, the better. All right, so in terms of the sports nutritionist, in terms of what we do, giving free talks to people like you is exactly what we do. It is built on a foundation of nutrition should not be overwhelming, it should not be stressful, and it should not be something that's confusing. And I know it, especially at your guys' age, it is so easy to fall down the rabbit hole of social media, listening to very rigid rules and very rigid timings about very rigid nutrition things, and it's very scary, but I promise you it doesn't have to be. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today, how to make it nice and easy. So just real quickly, what is sports nutrition? I know that a lot of people say, oh, you know, I'm eating really healthy, I'm totally fine, I don't need any help with my nutrition at all. Sports nutrition is not eating healthy, it is providing your body with the right foods to fuel the demands that you are putting on it based on the activity and the sport that you are completing. Yeah. All right, so what we're going to be talking about today is macronutrients. There's 3 of them. That if you guys don't take anything else away from me talking to you today, I want you guys to take away what macronutrients are and the role they have in the body, because it's super important, especially with a fast-paced game like basketball. Especially if you want to take it to the next level, nutrition is so important. You will not find an elite athlete or any kind of sports celebrity who has managed to get where they have gotten without a nutritionist in their corner. It is just so important. We're also going to touch on hydration and electrolytes, because I know that electrolytes is something that gets thrown around a lot, but I know it's something that a lot of people don't even know what they are, so we're going to touch on that. And then we're also going to talk about specific meals that you can have pre-training, at halftime, after training, you know, how you should structure your daily eating. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. All right, so when we're talking about macronutrients, again, it's 3 things. Firstly, carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. So when we're talking about carbohydrates, their entire role in the body is energy. They don't really do anything else. They are fuel for your activity. I want you guys to remember that. Carbohydrates equals fuel. For fat and protein, they both incorporate some aspect of sustaining your life, so sustaining you just existing. So for example, with fat, they are really important for your hormones, they're really important for your vitamin absorption, they're important for a bunch of different things, but fat is also energy. So the key difference between carbohydrates energy and fat energy is carbohydrates give you energy for fast-paced games. So speed games, basically, like basketball. For fat, it is the energy you use when you are going for a 2-hour walk. It's the energy you use when you're running a marathon, like slow activity. So that's the key difference between the 2 energy types there. And then protein, you don't get energy from protein. but it helps sustain life. So it has a massive health aspect. And how protein relates to performance is it helps you recover, and it is also super important for your immune system. That's all good. Oh, sorry, my formatting's kind of weird here, but that's all good. Basically, the key message is that with carbohydrates, how we were talking before about how it's energy, basically the energy of carbohydrates can be split down into two different things: fast release energy and slow release energy. So if when you guys were kids and you were playing basketball as kids, your coach would have had you sucking on oranges at halftime. That's because oranges are fast release energy. Same with ice cream, cakes, chocolate, all of those sorts of things are fast release energy. On the other hand, all your vegetables are slow release energy. So when you have fast release energy, what basically happens on a really simple level is you eat it. So let's say I had a lollipop. I ate the lollipop, it traveled through my digestive tract to my small intestines, and then basically enters my body in a tidal wave of energy. That's why you get that energy spike. That's why you feel like you're bouncing off the walls when you have some lollies. And then basically the physiological reaction to that is that your body goes, we have a lot of energy, we have to sort that out. So basically your energy then dips really low, and that's why you have an energy crash. That's why you're really tired, that's why you feel sick. That's what's happening. If you have a lollipop, your energy goes like that and then goes like that because of the tidal wave of energy, because it's fast release. And it's awesome, that type of energy is awesome if you are having it at halftime and you need it in a basketball game. Slow release energy basically drip feeds that energy. Slow release foods basically drip feed that energy. So when it gets to your small intestines, instead of a tidal wave of energy, it keeps you nice and full, and basically, drip feeds that energy across a couple of hours. So instead of looking like this when you have a lollipop, when you have a carrot, it looks like that. If that makes sense. All right, so examples of fast release energy and slow release energy. Fast release energy would be your fruit juice, your candy, your packaged snacks, your soda, especially your energy drinks. So inside your body, your energy is going like this. That's why after a couple energy drinks, if you're someone that drinks quite a lot of energy drinks, you will find that you are quite tired by mid-afternoon. With slow release energy, that is all your grains, your vegetables, your legumes, your rice, all those sorts of things. Their main role is to provide you energy that is slow release throughout the day, keeping you nice and full and keeping your energy levels relatively stable. When it comes to your performance, roughly an hour or so before you go into a training session or go into a game, different ways that you can incorporate carbohydrates to benefit your performance is have some Wheat Bix with oats and yogurt and milk. If you are stopping home before you go to a training session, or you can, I know that's a smoothie option there, or you can actually just eat a banana, for example, with some yogurt. There's so many different ways that can be super convenient that you can get those carbohydrates in. In terms of half time, you want that fast release energy, because basically in a game of basketball, you are having to run a lot, you're having to be really quick with your reaction times, you're also needing a lot of power. So you need a lot of speed and you need a lot of power. Both of those use carbohydrates for energy. Remember how we were talking before, carbohydrates fuel fast games? So that's when you're burning your carbohydrates. So at halftime, you can have dried fruit, you can have lollies, or you can also have some sports drink. I will touch on that later on to do with the electrolytes, but that's one of the reasons why sports drinks are so popular at halftime, because they contain carbohydrates, which means that you have fast available fuel for your performance. All right, so the formatting is so bad. I'm so sorry, team. So when we're talking about protein, remember it's not fuel, it is life-sustaining. So basically, if we didn't eat enough protein, I know that on social media you hear a lot of oh, protein is just for bodybuilders. You know, it's not. If we don't eat enough protein, we will literally die. It's what our organs, it's what our connective tissue, it is what our, you know, basically everything is built upon, but specifically in regard to you guys, our immune system and our recovery. So if you're finding that you are coming out of a training session and staying really sore in your muscles for a couple days, it could be because you're not eating enough protein. All right, so convenient protein sources an hour or so before training. As we mentioned though, protein is not fuel, so this is just optional. Most people wouldn't have protein before training. They would focus on their fats or the carbohydrates because they are both fuel. That being said, a really easy way of just increasing your protein for the day is having boiled eggs or canned tuna. Really easy to have in your lunch as well. When we're talking about daily protein intake, yes, there is also protein in plants. I know that that again is lost in social media, but complete protein sources from plants is just as good as meat sources. You just have to eat a little bit more. All right, and in terms of fat, it is energy as well as life-sustaining function. Again, if we didn't have enough fat in our diet, we would die, because it's super important for our hormones, it's super important for the absorption of vitamins, and it is super important for our immune system and our inflammation in our body, so it helps fight inflammation. In regard to sport, it also aids in your recovery and delays how tired you're getting, but when we're talking about how it fuels the body, when we're working out, it fuels that slow activity. So since basketball is a mixture, like predominantly it's a fast sport, right? But then in your trainings, you're not going to spend an hour doing shuttle runs, right? You're going to probably do something high intensity and then probably something low intensity and then high intensity, low intensity. So that's where we need fat. And that's why we need a mixture of carbohydrates and fats. So just running through that again, there are 3 macronutrients. First one is carbohydrates. It is fuel. Second macronutrient is fat, and it is fuel as well as health. And then protein is health. I want you guys to remember that. If you don't walk away with anything else, remember that. All right, so when we're talking about convenient fat sources, this is super applicable if you know that you're going to have a lower intensity workout session or training session. So you can have some mixed nuts and seeds. You can also have a can of tuna. I know that we talked about it in protein as well, but a can of tuna is really, really awesome if you are a meat eater because it's really high in fat as well as protein. In terms of daily energy, you can have some avocado, olive oil, nuts and seeds, as well as fish. So fat is really good for, you know how we were talking before with carbohydrates, you either get this or you get this. With fat, you only get this. You don't get that spike in energy and that fall in energy. So it's a really good way to just make sure you're not getting a mid-afternoon slump, basically. All right, so when we're talking about basketball in particular, we want a mixture. We want to focus on carbohydrate intake, but we also want some fat and some protein in there as well. So Wheat Bix with milk, if you again are stopping off home, crush up a Wheat Bix in a glass of milk. Super simple, super easy, and it'll stop you feeling super exhausted after the end of the game or the training session. Peanut butter and jam sandwich, great on the go. Just chuck it in your lunchbox, have it an hour before training. Or you can have, you know, a bottle of yogurt, have some banana in there, and have some mixed nuts and seeds. Totally fine. In terms of that half-time quick release energy of carbohydrates, it will always be carbohydrates that you have at halftime. You could have some fruit leather if your parents don't want you eating lollies. You could have some lollies, or you could have, you know, a sports drink or a fruit drink. With sports drinks, they are great because they contain that quick release carbohydrate. However, they're really expensive. And I know that the economy is tough at the moment, so a really good alternative is actually just mixing some Raro in some water. Super fine. If you want to include some electrolytes, just add that much salt. Totally fine. If I was you guys, I would save electrolytes till game day. Or you can also have some water-dense fruit, such as an orange. All right, so in total, take a mental screenshot of this slide. It will be in the pop quiz. you could earn a prize. So when we're talking about carbohydrates, it is energy for fast sports. When we're talking about protein, it is really important for recovery and for health. And when we're talking about fat, it is energy as well as really important for health, and it fuels slow sports. All right, so moving on to hydration and recovery. Basically, summarizing it in a really, really simple way, water has has three main roles in the body. Firstly, it is your temperature regulation. That's why you sweat. Your body is trying to cool yourself down. It is super important for your recovery, your muscle recovery after you've finished training. It is one of the main reasons why you don't get sore, because you're hydrated. It's also really important for just daily cellular functioning. It's really, really important with food digestion, as well as removing waste on a cellular level. All right, this is one that shocks people. When you wake up from an 8-hour sleep, you have lost between this much and this much water. So between half a litre and 1 whole litre of water through just breathing and through your skin, which is massive. A lot of people don't think about that, but they actually wake up in a dehydrated state. So let's say that this level is being just hydrated on a baseline level, just normal level that you need to be hydrated to exist. When you wake up in the morning, you're here. If you don't have a glass of water straight upon waking up and take yourself to there immediately, what happens is you spend a lot of the day just climbing out of that deficit state. And that is massive. That could be one of the reasons if you're sleeping really poorly, could be one of the reasons you wake up in a bad mood, is just the fact that you're dehydrated, especially if you haven't been drinking enough the day before. That dehydrated state just compounds and compounds. So side effects of being dehydrated is you get tired really quickly. Not just, hey, I finished school and I'm tired. It's, oh man, I am exhausted after doing not much at all. Could be because you're dehydrated. Bad mood. So parents, if your kids are getting home and they are super cranky after a day at school, could be because they're dehydrated. Also results in poor concentration and poor memory. So if you're on the court, how this relates to basketball is you will find it really difficult tracking where the ball is. You will find it really difficult tracking where your teammates are. Your cognition for tactics out the window. Your teammate's there and you're meant to be there, but you're here. Why? Because you're dehydrated and you don't really know what's going on. So it also significantly slows down your reaction time as well as your power and your speed. It kind of compounds into everything. It has a massive, massive impact. So being dehydrated, don't do it. Just make sure you're drinking enough. Really easy ways to do this. Firstly, get a drink bottle that you enjoy using. Carry it around with you throughout the day. If you don't like the flavor of water, I know that a lot of people don't, that's completely fine. Flavor the water. You can either use fruit, you can use, those artificial drops, which is like 2 drops per glass of water. I know that a lot of people will say, oh, that's bad because you're adding artificial things into the water. The benefit you will get from being hydrated is a lot more than the negative side effects, if you experience any, from the flavoring. So do keep that in mind, parents as well as kids. And also just make sure you're eating a lot of water-dense foods in the form of fruit and vegetables. When you are working out, or when you're training, when you're on the court, 1 litre per 1 hour of activity. General rule, that is what you should be following. Obviously, if you're in a really hot environment or sweating heaps or exercising in a really intense way, you will need more. All right, so moving on to electrolytes. Oh, something I want you guys to remember is when you wake up from an 8-hour sleep, you lose between half a litre and 1 litre of water. All right, so moving on to electrolytes. Electrolytes are minerals. That's what they are. There are 5 of them. There's sodium, potassium, magnesium, chloride, and calcium. Most of the time, you can get them from your foods. I know a lot of people don't really think about that, getting electrolytes from foods. There are heaps of electrolytes in heaps of different foods. Basically, if you are focusing on a whole natural unprocessed diet, your electrolytes will be totally fine. When we're talking about supplementing our electrolytes, it is determined by 2 things. firstly, how much you're sweating, and secondly, if you were getting home and you find that like you've got salt residue on your clothes, maybe you don't feel like you're sweating that much, but you do notice that on your clothes, it means that you are losing more sodium than other people would just through your sweat. Sodium is the main electrolyte that's lost through sweat, so just do keep that in mind, and it is determined by your rate of sweat and by how much you are exercising. Symptoms of low sodium include muscle cramps, but also this can be due to low magnesium. So if you are someone who cramps a lot, and I know being in this stage of life where you are growing a lot, your body is kind of shifting and changing a lot. If you experience cramps a lot, add that much salt to your drink bottle. You shouldn't taste it, you shouldn't see it, you shouldn't know it's there, but it could make a world of difference. You also get really tired, weakness, headaches, dizziness, impaired focus again. So if you're low in sodium, it does again have quite a compounding effect throughout your life. When we're talking about electrolytes for you guys specifically, save them till game day unless you are highly suspicious of being low in electrolytes. That being said, if you do think you're low in electrolytes, what you can do is just increase your intake of vegetables and fruits. That's the first place to start before you start supplementing anything. As you can see, there is a wide range of different places where you can get a bunch of minerals. Do just keep that in mind, that if you are cramping and you are finding that you are sweating a lot, just focus on those foods there. All right, so kind of summing that all up, carbohydrates are super important for your power and your speed in basketball. They can be found in vegetables, grains, fruits, etc. Your stamina and how fatigued you get, how quickly, is determined by your fat intake, which is nuts, seeds, peanut butter, cheeses, etc. For your recovery and your health and your immune system and your sleep, that is your protein. So when you are eating your protein, make sure you're mixing your meat or your animal sources and your plants, because that's just a really good way of just making sure you're getting a bunch of amino acids in you. And in terms of on the daily basis, just make sure you're getting a variety of whole, natural, unprocessed foods. I know when people hear that, they think, canned tuna is processed. I mean, like if it's more than 85% whole and natural, it is completely fine. Basically, your body is talking to you all of the time, and we've got to learn to listen to it and learn what our different engine lights in our bodies mean. So if we're sleeping really poorly or we've got really low energy, we've got to learn what we can do to offset that. All right, so if you're low in carbohydrates or fats or proteins or electrolytes and you're dehydrated, that is basically going to have a massive impact, not just on your health, but also your performance. Not just because your health is being decreased, but also just solely the impact these different foods and these different features have on your performance in basketball. So if you are someone who wants to make a career out of basketball, make sure that you are kind of just following this general rule of thumb guide. Honestly, like you're quite lucky. In this presentation, we are covering like all the basics. I know we're covering a lot, but I promise you, if you can absorb all of this, you'll be great. All right, so in terms of an example day of eating, breakfast can just be some Wheat Bix and oats. Morning tea, optional, that's protein right there, as well as sustained energy through carbohydrates. And then with lunch, make sure you are getting some vegetables in the form of salad things, or it can be cooked vegetables, whatever it happens to be, and some meats in there as well. In terms of afternoon tea, as we mentioned before, you can just crush up a Wheat Bix in a glass of milk, or you can have canned tuna and crackers, or you can have the super convenient peanut butter and jam. During training, make sure you're focusing on being hydrated. Save the electrolytes until game day. And then after training, completely optional, you can have a yogurt and some muesli bars, or some yogurt and a muesli bar. All right, in terms of dinner, this is mostly talking to the mums and dads in the room. If you are the cooker of dinner in your household, general rule of thumb, whether your plate is this big or whether it's this big, 50% of it should be vegetables, because that's where all of your antioxidants and all of your vitamins and minerals come from. Quarter of it should be your protein, so that is your meat and your plant sources that we talked about before, and quarter of it should be your starchier carbohydrates, so your potato, your grains, your wheats, and your pasta, for example. And then you should also have 2 thumbs worth of fat in there, whether it's cheese, whether it's nuts and seeds, whether it's the oil that you cooked with. So just make sure that you are getting a well-rounded variety in there. As I mentioned before, your body is continuously talking to you. It doesn't lie. It is one of the only things that doesn't lie, but you've got to realize what is happening in your body, what it's trying to tell you, and what you need to do to fix it. If you do that, long and happy life to you. All right, so takeaway points. Everything that we talked about has a massive impact on your performance. Focus on those key macronutrients. There's 3 of them. Remember, it's carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. They all have a different role in the body. Once you know what they are in the body, what they look like, the foods that they look like, you stop seeing food as good or bad, and you start seeing them for the role that they play in your body and when you should have them. And hydration and making sure you've got high levels of minerals in your diet is also super important as well. All right, so in terms of what the sports nutritionist does and how we can help you as growing athletes, we do nutrition programs, which a lot of our young athletes find really beneficial because they are grounded so much in education. All of the sessions we have together are basically education sessions. We also offer 20-minute nutrition consult and body scan. So the body scan can tell you whether you have got any muscle imbalances, what your minerals are doing, that sort of thing. It's really awesome. It's the only scan of its type in New Zealand and Australia. We get you lying down and we actually connect different electrodes to you, which is pretty cool. In terms of our full body Warrant of Fitness, you can't really see at the end there. It is 60 minutes long and we do an entire check on your entire body. We see what your metabolic system's doing, we see what your blood glucose is doing, we see what your ketones are doing, we see what your blood pressure is doing, we see what everything is doing, and where there's holes in your general health that could be having a run-on effect to your performance. If you're interested, I'll leave some flyers somewhere around at some point, and you guys can just browse them whenever you'd like. We have gotten to the question part though. Awesome. I know that was a lot, I know that was a long time, but do you guys have any questions for me? No questions. Oh, yep. 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 What's the best way to kind of go about that? Yeah, 100%, 100%. So in that situation, it's really good to incorporate some form of fat or make sure that they have had an hour before had that fat source, because it means that they do have fuel available to sustain them. That being said, it depends on the athlete. Some people tolerate high amounts of fat before a game really well, but other people feel quite bloated, and so it would be great to just kind of give them, some nuts and seeds, maybe covered in chocolate. That could be a really good alternative. That could be a really good alternative, or like different ways that you can kind of mix and mesh carbohydrates and fats. So that's a really good way of making sure that, because you have to go for such a long time in such a high stress environment, you don't want that happening every single time you have some carbohydrates. So just mixing them both together is a really good way, or also limiting the amount of carbohydrates or like lollies or whatever it happens to be at halftime or between the games. Like maybe have one lolly and check in with the energy levels, but don't have a bunch because you will use that again. Good question. Are there any other questions? Yep.
Do you have any advice for players from Europe about what snacks we should be putting in their bag if they go away for a weekend program?
Oh, yep.
Or what the players should be buying if they're out of tournament? Can you go through that a little bit for us?
Yeah, 100%. So in terms of snacks that are really great to kind of grab and go, because yes, I could say, hey, cans of tuna are fantastic, but also then you've got the can and like they're leaky and that sort of thing. So really good ones to have just in terms of general energy is dried meats. It is trail mix. That's really good. But ultimately, fruit as well is really awesome. It's just super convenient. In terms of staying away and needing fuel to, like between the games, for example, you could kind of incorporate everything that we really talked about. But in terms of ones that are really great, it is more kind of that trail mix or as we mentioned before, chocolate-coated either dried fruit or nuts and seeds. Yeah, so just really, really, especially when you can get them in the little packets, you know, those are really great. Are there any other questions before we jump into the pop quiz? Yeah?
You mentioned energy drinks and things like that.
Yep.
What's your thought on caffeine?
Like everything, it's not good and it's not bad. It has a role in the body. It can be beneficial for performance because it does heighten your awareness, it increases your reaction times, and it also, you know, it is the main ingredient in fat burners. So if you guys are, you know, going to the gym where you're at the stage now where you're taking, or you're looking at taking fat burners, the reason fat burners are like, yeah, we burn fat, it's great, it's because they contain caffeine. So basically it makes your heart beat really fast, and that's what your body is doing. It's very short-lived, it's not a fat burner. The supplement industry is not very heavily regulated, so it's really easy to get lost in that kind of maze. But when we're talking about energy drinks in particular, they are a cheap alternative to fat burners, but ultimately when it comes to your guys' performance, if you do have an energy drink before a game, you will find that you actually get that energy rise and energy crash because they are often quite sugar heavy. And even in the Musashi ones, which are sugar free, they do still contain artificial sugars, which still have an impact on your energy rise and energy drop. Did that answer your question? Yeah, awesome. All right, sweet. So we will jump into the pop quiz real quickly. Firstly, is carbohydrates energy or is it health? Yes. Would you like a hat or a drink bottle? Drink bottle. You want to pass that back for me? All right, question number 2. How much water? Oh, you know what? Question number 2. True or false? You lose between half a litre and 1 litre. Yep. True. Drink bottle or hat? You're welcome. All right, third question. If you are finding that you are cramping a lot, you are possibly low in sodium and magnesium. True or false? Ooh, yeah? True. Do you want to pass that back for me, please? All right, and last question. Last question is, if you are finding that after you play a game and your muscles are really sore, you are possibly under-eating protein. True or false? Oh, was that a real hand? I saw your hand going up and down. Go on.
Is it true?
Is that a question? Are you locking that in?
It's true.
It is true. All right, awesome team. Thank you so much for your time. I know I've run a little bit over time. I apologize for that. Thank you so much for your patience. I will leave these little flyers around somewhere. They run through what we do. They run through the 20-minute and the 60-minute sessions that we offer, and you can give it a read. But yeah, awesome. Thank you guys so much for your time.